Hello, I'm Major Brian Lonis, a professor of administrative and civil law at the Judge Advocate General's Legal Center and School. This training, Political Activities, What You Need to Know for the Upcoming Election Cycle, satisfies the training requirement established by the Undersecretary of the Army's 2 July 2020 Memorandum on Limitations on Political Activities for Army Personnel. As we move towards the 2020 elections, all Army personnel, military and civilian, must be aware of the limitations that affect our participation in political activity. While all personnel are encouraged to carry out the obligations of citizenship, we must be mindful of the long-standing tradition that the Department of Defense and the Army remain apolitical. This training will assist you in applying the rules to your particular circumstances and will help you avoid inadvertent missteps. This is the agenda for our training. We will discuss key definitions such as partisan political activities. We will cover the left and right limits of your participation in partisan political activities. We will discuss the rules regarding your political activities and social media. We will cover the application of these rules in a telework environment. And finally, we will discuss the interplay between these rules and your ability to participate in public demonstrations. The two primary sources for the rules governing partisan political activities are Department of Defense Directive 1344.10 and the Hatch Act. Directive 1344.10 applies to soldiers, while the Hatch Act applies to civilian employees of the Army. While the source of the rules differ for soldiers and civilian employees, the rules are generally the same. When the rules differ, I will highlight them for you throughout the class. The ultimate takeaway for this class is that the Department of Defense and in turn, the Department of the Army require three things of you in regards to your political activities. 1. Be a good citizen. 2. Avoid partisan political activity. And 3. Avoid inferences of official endorsement by the Army or your unit. With these tenets in mind, your first question should be, what is partisan political activity? Partisan political activity is any activity directed to the success or failure of a political party, such as the Democrat or Republican parties depicted here, a partisan political group, or a candidate for partisan political office. Armed with an understanding of what is covered by these rules, it is also necessary to discuss what is not covered. Specifically, nonpartisan political activity is not covered by Directive 1344.10 or the Hatch Act. Nonpartisan activity is any activity that is not associated with the success or failure of a political party. For example, legislation such as the National Defense Authorization Act or the Affordable Care Act, social issue-oriented campaigns such as gun control or the Black Lives Matter movement, and attending a march or a rally, like the Women's March or the March for Science. Even if an issue-oriented campaign breaks down on party lines, it is not necessarily partisan. If the activity does not include showing support or opposition to a political party or a candidate for partisan office, then it is nonpartisan, and participation is not limited by Directive 1344.10 or the Hatch Act. However, because of the appearance of official endorsement, uniform wear is prohibited at marches or rallies. We will discuss public demonstrations in greater detail later in the class. The final key definition we need to discuss is the categories for civilian employees under the Hatch Act. As you see on the screen, there are two general categories of employees for Hatch Act purposes: less restricted and further restricted. The majority of civilian employees in the Army are less restricted. Less restricted employees may actively participate in the management of partisan political campaigns, subject to some prohibitions that we will discuss. Further restricted civilian employees are generally subject to the same restrictions as soldiers. Armed with these key definitions, let's discuss some of the political activities that you are allowed to do. Here, you see a list of political activities that are allowed. You may register to vote and vote for the candidate you choose. You may encourage others to vote and to participate in the political process. However, you must be sensitive to rank and positional differences. For example, you may not use your official authority, position, rank, or influence to affect the outcome of an election, such as involving subordinates or using your official title or position. You may join a partisan political club, but you may not attend meetings during duty hours and are prohibited from wearing your uniform to meetings or gatherings for the partisan political group. You may display one normal-sized partisan political bumper sticker on your POV. Oversized or multiple, like those depicted on this slide, are prohibited. You may sign petitions for specific legislative actions and write letters to the editor. However, you may not be part of an organized letter-writing campaign. You cannot solicit votes, and you must disclaim that your letter is in your personal capacity and does not represent an endorsement by the Department of Defense or the Army. You may express your political opinion. However, soldiers must use extreme caution here. Article 88 and Article 134 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice criminalize the use of contemptuous words against elected officials. For example, if you write an offensive social media post criticizing the President, Vice President, or the Congress, you may be punished by your command. Now let's discuss political activities that are prohibited. Generally, there are two categories of prohibitions: things that you cannot do while on duty or at work or in uniform, and things that you are prohibited from doing 24/7. While on duty or in the workplace, you may not engage in any of the activities listed on the slide. On duty or in the workplace includes when teleworking, in a government room or building, including break rooms, conference rooms, gyms, cafeterias, or union offices, when wearing your uniform or insignia, or when using a government vehicle. Turning to 24/7 restrictions, you are prohibited from engaging in any of these activities at all times, during duty hours, during non-duty hours, from work, and from home. You may not engage in any fundraising efforts for a partisan political candidate, party, or organization. As discussed previously, you may attend a partisan political gathering, but you may not speak before the gathering, and you are prohibited from wearing your uniform to the event. The picture on this slide shows a soldier who attended a Representative Rand Paul campaign rally in uniform in 2012. The soldier spoke before the gathering and encouraged others to vote for Representative Paul, who, at the time, was a candidate for President of the United States. The soldier's actions violated Directive 1344.10, and he received an administrative reprimand from his command. Further restricted civilian employees and soldiers are prohibited from actively participating in campaigning. This prohibition means you may not volunteer for a campaign, distribute campaign materials, organize campaign events, serve as a party delegate, or forward campaign emails. Finally, you may not run for partisan political office. This prohibition does not apply to soldiers in the reserve component not serving on active duty, but limitations exist. As such, reserve component soldiers running for partisan elections should seek guidance from your local ethics counselor. Now that we've covered your left and right limits for political activities, let's do a quick check on learning. May you display any of the 3 items shown on the screen at work in your office? Yes, you can display them. These items are not prohibited by the Hatch Act because they are not directed at the success or failure of a partisan candidate or party. Remember, conservative and liberal are political ideologies, not partisan groups, and gun control is a nonpartisan social issue. How about these items? May you display any of them at work, in your office? No, none of these items may be displayed. These items are prohibited by the Hatch Act because they are all directed at the success or failure of a partisan party or candidate. The Republican and Democrat parties are, by definition, partisan parties, and the Make America Great Again and No Trump slogans are directed at the success or failure of a partisan candidate. Here, President Trump's re-election campaign. How about these posters? May you display either of them at work? No. These posters are prohibited in the workplace. Campaign signs are, by their very nature, partisan political items which may not be displayed at work. How about these pictures of President Trump? May you display any of them at work? You may display the president's official portrait on the left, and you have likely seen it in your unit area. This photo is appropriate because it is in his official capacity as President and Commander-in-Chief and is not associated with his partisan re-election campaign. Likewise, you may display a personal photo of the President, but only if he is performing an official function as the President of the United States or Commander-in-Chief, such as the picture in the middle of the President at the Medal of Honor ceremony for Master Sergeant Matthew Williams. However, you may not display the photo on the right. This photo was taken at a campaign event, and the President was not performing any official function. Note, the podium in the picture shows the Trump campaign re-election logo, not the official seal of the President of the United States. Turning to our final check on learning, may you display any of these items in your office at work? The answer varies. You may display Secretary Clinton's logo from her 2016 election campaign because she is no longer a partisan candidate, so the logo on the left is allowed. Likewise, you may display President Reagan's campaign sign because he is no longer a partisan candidate. The same holds true for the poster of President Obama. Because he is not a candidate for a partisan political office, this display is allowed. You may not, however, display the button on the right from President Trump's 2016 election campaign. President Trump is currently a candidate. The Office of Special Counsel has determined that campaign materials for President Trump's 2016 campaign, including the Make America Great Again hats, are partisan political activities and may not be displayed at work. Over the past several slides, we learned that the items currently displayed on the screen are not prohibited by the Hatch Act because they are not directed at the success or failure of a partisan political candidate or party. However, we must all be mindful of the need for good order and discipline. As noted in this language from Directive 1344.10, the spirit and intent of the directive is to avoid any association or endorsement of partisan political activity. While we now know that these 6 items can be displayed, you and your leadership must determine whether it is appropriate for them to be displayed in your workplace. Over the past year, the Office of the Special Counsel reported over 1,200 Hatch Act violations throughout the federal government. As you can see on this slide, the potential penalties for civilian employees violating the Hatch Act and for soldiers violating Department of Defense Directive 1344.10 are severe. Directive 1344.10 was last updated in 2008, and the Hatch Act, which was passed into law in 1939, was last amended in 2012. In the intervening years, social media has exploded and has become a platform for partisan political candidates and parties. To help navigate the sometimes murky waters of social media, let's discuss your left and right limits for engaging in political activities on social media. This slide lists several actions that are prohibited, such as tweeting, retweeting, sharing, or liking fundraising posts, sharing, liking, or following partisan political content while you are in the workplace or on duty, and using your official authority or influence, even on social media, to affect the outcome of a partisan election. Let's look at a few examples. Here, you can see that you are authorized to list your political views in your demographic information on your social media account, even if you identify as a soldier or Department of Army civilian elsewhere in your profile. You may not, however, share or like a fundraising post on social media at any time, on or off duty. When you like or share a fundraising post like this, it appears on your timeline and in your friends' feeds. In other words, by liking or sharing this post, the user has engaged in partisan political fundraising, which is prohibited by Directive 1344.10 and the Hatch Act. Likewise, you may not retweet a fundraising tweet like the user did here. By retweeting the fundraising tweet, you have distributed and shared the tweet with your followers. Again, by retweeting this post, the user has engaged in partisan political fundraising, which is prohibited by Directive 1344.10 and the Hatch Act. Given the current challenges of social distancing and the prevalence of teleworking throughout the force, let's briefly discuss the interplay between teleworking and political activities. While teleworking away from your traditional office, you are considered on duty or at the workplace. As such, the rules governing political activities in the workplace apply to a telework environment. Specifically, while teleworking, you may not engage in partisan political activity, such as sharing or liking partisan political content on social media, even from your personal device. While on a work-related video call, you may not wear partisan political clothing or have partisan political materials visible in the background. Finally, remember that even after your telework hours are over, you may not use your government communication device to engage in partisan political activity. As we discussed at the beginning of this training, public demonstrations, like many of those that have occurred in our country over the past several months, are generally not partisan political activities. And because they are not partisan political activities, they are not governed by Directive 1344.10 or the Hatch Act. Other authority, however, may limit your ability to fully participate in these activities. For soldiers, Department of Defense Instruction 1325.06 governs participation in public demonstrations and protest activity. The instruction charges commanders to carefully balance soldiers' constitutionally protected freedom of expression with good order, discipline, and unit effectiveness. Specifically, Soldiers are prohibited from participating in off-post demonstrations, rallies, or protests if the demonstration occurs during your normal duty hours, is outside of the United States, the demonstration constitutes a breach of law and order, or if violence is likely to result, and soldiers are prohibited from participating in demonstrations, rallies, or protests if they are in uniform, as the wear of your uniform could constitute an implied endorsement of the activity by the Department of Defense or the Army. Likewise, unless a public demonstration is organized by or conducted in support of a partisan group, party, or candidate, the Hatch Act does not limit civilian employee participation. Civilian employees must not officially endorse or create an appearance of officially endorsing non-federal entities. As such, civilian employees may only participate in public demonstrations in a personal capacity, during off-duty hours, or in a leave status. As always, when expressing your personal opinion publicly, it must be clear that your opinion does not represent the official position of the Department of Defense or the Army. Finally, this infographic provides you with simple guidance on what you can, can't, must, and should do with respect to public demonstrations, political activities, and social media. A digital copy of this infographic has been provided with this training package. Always remember to think, type, and then post. Think about the message being communicated and who could potentially view it. Type a communication that is consistent with the Army values. Post only those messages that demonstrate dignity and respect for yourself and others. This concludes our training. Should you have any questions regarding political activities, please seek guidance from your chain of command or your local ethics counselor. We are all in this together. Thank you for your time and attention. Welcome back. Again, I'm Major Brian Lonis, a professor of administrative and civil law at the Judge Advocate General's Legal Center and School. We just completed the training video, Political Activities, What You Need to Know for the Upcoming Election Cycle. We hope that the training video answered most of your questions about your ability to participate in the political process, but we know that this topic can be confusing at times. We asked teammates throughout the Army to send us their questions about political activities. While there were many great questions, 5 questions were asked the most often. During this video, we will answer those 5 questions. As always, if you have additional questions, please seek guidance from your chain of command or local ethics counselor. Let's turn to our first question. I understand that these rules apply to national elections, but what about state or local elections? The partisan or nonpartisan nature of an election is determinative, not the level at which the election is held. If a local election is nonpartisan, meaning that candidates are not endorsed by or do not register with and do not identify with political parties, then Directive 1344.10 and the Hatch Act do not apply. If the local election is partisan, then the rules associated with Directive 1344.10 and the Hatch Act apply. This means that even lower-level elections, such as local school boards or county sheriff races, may fall under these rules if the election is partisan. Let's turn to our second question. Make America Great Again was the campaign motto for President Trump's 2016 election campaign. The president's current campaign motto is Keep America Great. Does that mean that I can wear my red Make America Great Again hat to the office? No. The Office of Special Counsel has determined that campaign material from President Trump's 2016 election campaign, including the Make America Great Again hats, are partisan political items, and you may not wear them or display them in the office or at work. For a period of time after President Trump was elected and inaugurated in 2017, you were allowed to wear the Make America Great Again hat to the office. This is because President Trump was no longer a candidate for partisan political office at that time. When President Trump became a candidate for partisan political office again, any items associated with his 2016 election or 2020 re-election campaign became prohibited for wear or display in the office. Let's turn to our third question. I met and had a photo taken with a congressperson currently up for re-election during her recent visit to Post. May I display this photograph in my workplace? The rules governing the display of photographs of partisan political candidates, like this congressperson running for re-election here, apply to this scenario. Because this photo is not an official portrait of the elected official, you may display this photo only if 1. The photo was on display in your workplace in advance of the election season. 2. You are personally in the photo. 3. The photo is a personal one, depicting a personal relationship, such as an attendance at a wedding. And 4. You do not have political purpose in displaying the photograph. If all 4 of these conditions are met, then you may display the photograph in your workplace. However, you must always remember to avoid actions that imply endorsement by the Department of Defense or the Army. Ultimately, because this photo was taken at an official visit and does not depict a personal relationship, it is likely not appropriate to display in your workplace. Let's turn to our fourth question. I really believe that the Army's interests are aligned with a particular candidate. Can I talk about that with my coworkers and the members of my unit? No, you may not. While you are generally free to express your personal opinion on partisan political activities, Directive 1344.10 and the Hatch Act prohibit these conversations at work. You must always remember to avoid using your official position as a soldier or federal government employee to affect the outcome of an election. As such, you may not encourage members of your unit to vote for a particular partisan candidate. Several high-level federal employees have run afoul of this rule. Here are some examples. Housing and Urban Development Secretary Julian Castro's 2016 comment, now taking off my HUD hat for a second and just speaking individually, it is very clear that Hillary Clinton is the most experienced, thoughtful, and prepared candidate for president that we have this year, was a violation of the Hatch Act. Health and Human Services Secretary Catherine Sebelius's 2012 comment, one of the imperatives is to make sure that we not only come together here in Charlotte to present the nomination to the president, but we make sure that in November, he continues to be president for another 4 years, was also a violation of the Hatch Act. Secretary of the Interior Ryan Zinke's 2018 tweet showing him wearing a pair of socks with President Trump's face and a Trump campaign's Make America Great Again campaign slogan on them, while at an official event in his official capacity as secretary, was a violation of the Hatch Act. Ambassador to the United Nations Nikki Haley's 2017 retweet of President Trump's tweet of an endorsement of a South Carolina congressional candidate was also a violation of the Hatch Act. Note, the only civilian employees of the executive branch of the federal government who are not covered by the Hatch Act are the President and the Vice President. As such, President Trump's tweet of an endorsement for Congressman Ralph Norman is not a Hatch Act violation because the Hatch Act does not apply to the President of the United States. Let's turn to our fifth and final question. The events in our country over the past several months have had a profound impact on me personally. I would like to participate in a local march in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. May I attend and march in the event in my personal capacity? Generally, yes, you may attend the Black Lives Matter or a similar march. However, limitations exist. Remember, you may not wear your uniform to a march, demonstration, rally, or protest. Wearing your uniform to an event like these is prohibited because it could constitute an implied endorsement of the activity by the Department of Defense or the Army. Likewise, your chain of command is responsible for balancing your constitutionally protected freedom of expression with good order, discipline, and unit effectiveness. As such, if your chain of command orders you not to attend the event, you are prohibited from attending. Recall, your chain of command must prohibit you from attending the event if it occurs during your normal duty hours, if it is outside of the United States, if the event constitutes a breach of law and order or if violence is likely to result at the event, or if the event is conducted by or in support of a partisan political group, party, or candidate. Attending peaceful, nonviolent, nonpartisan events inside the United States while off duty, in your personal capacity, and not in uniform are generally authorized. Remember to seek guidance from your chain of command and to avoid activity that implies endorsement by the Department of Defense or the Army. Thank you very much for your time and attention today. If you have any questions regarding political activities, please talk with your chain of command or your local ethics counselor.